everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Thursday, everyone. I hope your week's going well. Back at it with another video, and I had a little bit of free time in my schedule, so I wanted to do something fun, and I figured what better day than to release this as the moon in Taurus is coming into conjunction with Jupiter. We're going to talk all about the future of money in 2024 and some of my hot takes on what might be happening with the world economy and the financial markets. Really excited to chat with you guys about this. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like this content, and also leave me a comment below and let me know what you think in terms of what I have to say. I always get a kick out of reading your guys' comments. I can't respond to all of them, but thank you guys so much for your support. The growth of the channel has been awesome, and if you guys like my content, you can support me as a full-time content creator by donating to my channel or joining my channel memberships. It makes it possible for me to do the research, create this long-form content, and bring you guys the latest astrology news on YouTube. All right, guys, so wowzers. It's always it's a dangerous thing when I have some free time on my hands because I can kind of dig into some of the astrology that I really like to do. Today, actually, we see a final trine that's starting to build between Mercury in Capricorn and Jupiter in Taurus. I really love the election astrology for today. So if you guys are looking to launch something, start something, make some moves with your money, or maybe be informed about some of your financial decisions, today's a good day to be working on all of that. So for me, with these future predictions, I've gotten so many comments, so many emails. People have been reaching out to me on various platforms and asking me what I think about some of the transits this year. We know that we're going to be seeing quite a few big energies that are going to be playing out, especially with this upcoming Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. There's been lots of chatter on the the internet, all over the news, talking about digital money, CBDCs, and also cryptocurrencies. But I wanted to give you guys some of the, I think, most important times this year and how they may kind of, manifest for all of us. If you guys have been watching my content for a long time, you guys know that this is a huge interest of mine. I also really like tying this to what's kind of going on politically here in the United States and the rest of the world. I am not a financial advisor by any means. I'm not giving you guys any recommendations. I'm just connecting the dots with what the astrology has to say. And I've been digging through some charts. Big money pattern trends this year are going to be kind of coming together. And I'd like to connect the dots with what's been going on with emerging financial news. I'm sure many of you guys have heard the saying, he who has the gold makes the rules, right? And so that's such an interesting concept considering that Pluto, which is literally about wealth and power and control, is moving into Aquarius, which is the opposite of gold. We know that Leo rules gold and Pluto is going into Aquarius, which is all about technology. It can be about digital surveillances. It's all about control revolving around tech and possibly how we are transacting. Recently, I ran across some news and it really made me go, wowzers, some things that most of us may not know. You guys can source a lot of this stuff online. You can pull this stuff up. A lot of this is bills and other things that have been passed through in legislation. But I saw a few things that have kind of gone on in recent years that kind of made me connect the dots and question what's going down. Well, here in the United States, in August of 2019, the Federal Reserve redefined what the definition of currency is. Now, previously to 2019, we saw three separate, examples or definitions for currency, but it wasn't until summer of 2019 that we saw one that was added. And quote unquote, it is now considered a means of social credit. What does that mean exactly? Social credit. We've seen that in China. We've seen talks about movement towards social credit in some of the Western world. Although we have not gotten to that point yet, there's discussions about whether or not that's somehow going to be connected to a digital currency. Later on in 2019, in November, we saw a patent that was filed by Visa. And they were talking about in this patent how they want to change money from paper to digital money And every new digital currency that is created will be taken out of paper currency, meaning what's in circulation is now going to start being, transitioned into this digital currency. But to bring in a digital system, you have to get rid of cash. And we've seen this recently in previous years, especially since the pandemic. There's been a total move to get rid of cash. It almost seems impossible to go some places without being able to pay for cash, or it's being turned away. Certainly we're seeing that with coins as well. We heard about coin shortages in recent years. And this is really the reason why I was calling this video Cash is King, because he who has the gold makes the rules. Well, traditionally throughout history, we see that generally the king is the one who makes the rules and has all of the gold. But with Pluto changing into Aquarius, this power change is about to kind of, be coming out before us. And to bring in this digital system, like I said, you have to abolish cash. There has to be a move to get rid of that. Well, we've seen that there's been concerns about, tax issues. It seems like the little man here in the United States is kind of getting nailed every which way till Sunday when it comes to paying our taxes. Everything from, PayPal to Venmo transactions now that are now being questioned as to whether or not there are things slipping between the cracks where taxes are not being paid. Perhaps maybe that's an incentive to move towards this cashless system. But my concern is that if it's digital, it is going to be tracked. And so if Pluto in Aquarius deals with, security, it deals with surveillance, and ultimately where there is some kind of information that's in the cloud or being digitally programmed, that's a little concerning. I think many of us are going to have concerns about our loss of privacy when it comes to exchange. Now, later on in 2020, in March of 2020, we also saw a bill that was introduced and signed, and this was by Maxine Waters, and this is Bill HR 6321. This talks about financial protections and assistance for Americans, consumers, institutions, and vulnerable populations act. Quite a mouthful, right? Makes it sound like they're really concerned about protecting us. But if you dig deeper into this, it talks about direct stimulus payments for families, homeowners, and business owners, which sounds good for whatever reason if we needed some kind of support. But now in 2024, looking at the aftermath of the pandemic and the stimulus payments, did it really help us, or did it add to our massive growing national debt? Also, not to mention the insane amount of money that we printed, physical money, which went into circulation, and now we're feeling the effects of that with inflation. Now, in order to push this along, or in order for people to receive some of these stimulus payments in the future for whatever reason, keep in mind this was passed right around the pandemic, it is required for there to be a digital dollar, right? So this the stimulus bill is basically saying if we're going to release this stimulus, it's going to be paid out in a digital dollar. In order to receive that digital dollar, what do you have to keep it? Likely we're going to see banks working to issue digital wallets. So in this bill, it says that it would be paid in a digital dollar to a digital wallet through a digital bank that accepts digital dollars. So essentially, if you want this potential future stimulus package, you have to comply. Interesting. So there's strings attached. Kind of makes me wonder if this is the beginning of, universal basic income, suggesting that we would have to be paying out this universal basic income for people who are going to need support during struggling financial times. My question is, will this extend to Social Security? Are we going to have lots of senior citizens who are dependent on these payments? And are they only going to be able to receive these payments if they have a digital wallet? What about government pensions or any kind of government payment? What about your retirement? If you have to pay your taxes in a digital dollar and it's required legally for you to pay your taxes or you go to jail, where is this getting a little tricky? And also, all these people who have been working their entire life to build towards having a retirement that they could live off of, only to be told they cannot withdraw that or use those resources unless they have a digital wallet. Seems a little biblical to me, but I'll keep my religious thoughts out of it. Moving on to March of 2022, we also saw Executive Order 14067. Biden signed this, where he proclaimed that a CBDC will be brought to America through the central banks. Now, the concern with CBDCs, central bank digital currency, is essentially these are programmable monies. This means that you can and will, they likely will be programmed, and there will be like logic and rules built into these programs, which means that this affects how you use it, when you use it, and how long you can use it for. Money can be programmed to expire. It can also limit your ability to buy certain goods at certain times or within a certain range. It may also limit who you can actually exchange with, and that's concerning as a consumer, but even more concerning if you're somebody who is a business, because if you are not allowed to transact, that could be a big problem. None of this is good. I think essentially it's eroding our freedoms of transaction and also privacy when it comes to exchange. Now, also in March, actually, of this last year, so this is now 2023, we saw at a UN assembly that the Common Agenda Policy brief was essentially proposing that the Grand Assembly provide the UN with a standard to intervene on the platform of an event of crisis. Sounds like a bunch of like mumbo jumbo, but essentially this was the UN saying if for whatever reason there is a global issue, if there's a crisis, if there's some kind of security issue, they want to be able to intervene and get involved in the platform and determine, how money is going to be exchanged or whether or not the crisis is big enough to make some significant changes in how we are able to buy or receive goods, sell things, how we're able to also have access to our banking. So when I think about this, I think about the first crisis, which seems like really it's been since 2020, the COVID pandemic, but it makes me wonder, like, what's next, right? Like, what are we going to be seeing next? Could this crisis be a banking failure, or could it be a war? Certainly, 2020 has some pretty heavy energies. We do see indications of both of these things that may be transpiring over the next 12 months. And they say that in terms of what could trigger an emergency of authority, they actually give you a list of things, and they list a major climatic event, a future pandemic, global connectivity disruption, or a major event in outer space like a solar flare. It also states while emergency authority has a finite lifespan, the UN could declare an indefinite emergency situation, which could essentially permanently allow the UN to intervene with what's going on with central banking and implement that we would have to move to a new system. So if any of this stuff concerns you, use the astrology right now. Don't take my word for it. Go and educate yourself. Mercury is in the sign of Capricorn. It is all about thinking about long-term planning, what we have control over, what our goals are, and it's trining the moon and Jupiter. So it pays quite literally to be informed. Now, I want to take you guys through the time periods that I think are going to be the most prominent, and I'm going to start with the earliest, and I'm going to work my way out. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to show you guys a number of different charts that I think are really interesting and give you guys my hot takes on what might be happening. So obviously, most of you guys are watching this as it's airing live on January 18th, but you can come back to this at any point in time, leave me some comments and let me know how this plays out. I have a feeling that this video is going to age very, very well. So yeah, we'll see how this goes this year. Obviously, the big news of this week is that we are about to see Pluto ingress into the sign of Aquarius. So it'll be here for 9 months this year before it briefly retrogrades back into Capricorn, only to fully move into Pluto really until 2044. So we're going to have quite a stretch here of Pluto in Aquarius. Now, as this ingress is happening, if you guys have seen my recent videos, I've been talking about just the synchronicity of both the Sun and Pluto moving together. No coincidence that with this Sun-Pluto conjunction, we are seeing just this buildup of talk about global power, global control. We're seeing lots of exposés and things in regards to politics and also big business. Davos is going on this week. We're seeing lots of people who are willingly shining a light, lots of independent reporters asking the hard questions of these people who are in charge. And so I'm really curious to see what happens even in the next week or so as Pluto begins to start moving into Aquarius. Likely, not just the ingress, but also in the future when we see squares to Pluto or oppositions, that's going to bring up some intensity as well. And as these two move, they're going to move together on the 21st of January. They're going to form this conjunction. In many ways, in traditional astrology, the sun can be seen as the king, right? Similar to your natal chart, where that's kind of like the power point of your chart and everything else is kind of radiating around that. The sun conjunct Pluto does shine a light on major changes, transformations, or purging of old ways of leadership. And so I think a lot of it can be that. We may see that there are some powerful teams and powerful duos. I'm very curious to see, especially throughout some of these presidential, nominees, I guess, or people who are running for the position of the president in 2024, are starting to shift gears and potentially back other candidates and show support in a group manner. And so this is the positive side, I think, of like Pluto and Aquarius, where we can actually create change for the future by working and banding together. But in order to do that, we have to purge out and expose the dark. So this whole next month or so, with Pluto's ingress and other planets getting ready to go through Aquarius and conjunct Pluto, like hold on to your shorts, things are gonna get a little wild. If you guys saw my 2024 presentation that I did on the astrology this year, I talked at length about Pluto and Aquarius and what this means for technology, what it means for AI, but I didn't go too deeply into money. Now, when I look at this, I think about how the modern ruler of Aquarius, which is Uranus, is also getting ready to go direct at the end of January. And so when we see an outer planet like this go direct, something likely is about to be revealed. So throughout the next week or so, Mars and Mercury, where we're seeing lots of motivation, action, and discussion about government spending, where money is going. You're also going to hear people beating the drums of war, because that's what Mars is. And we all know that throughout history, at least in American history, you can go further back, but just to reference something more current, that in desperate times economically, we have seen a number of presidents opt or choose to go to war to be able to better kind of stimulate an economy. And so I do think that we are going to see sparkles of that are going to be kind of coming up throughout this next week. Anyway, I digress. But Uranus being the dispositor of Pluto means that things that are going on when planets are coming into conjunction to Pluto is kind of reverberating from Uranus and Taurus, okay, which we've had for several years now. It has been bringing all kinds of wild things from, cryptocurrency to the FTX collapse. We've also seen a whole run in the digital art scene. And I think we're going to continue to see more of this. Remember that Uranus is about destabilizing something. It's the rebel, so it kind of goes against the grain. It doesn't like being told what to do. And right when you think it's going to zig, it generally has a tendency to zag. And it's brought a lot of disruption in the financial markets. We've seen a lot of destabilization in recent years, especially when we had Saturn in Aquarius. So I'm watching Uranus as we start to see these conjunctions, and we start to hear about how all of these groups, these panels, look at what's going on with Davos, start watching what's going on in Congress, start paying attention to what's going on with big tech. This is all going to be meetings coming together, conversations, discussions about the future of the economy, okay? Uranus represents groups and masses. Taurus represents money. This also is being shown out in the world through large groups of people, like in Germany, where people are protesting, they're coming together, they're all standing up basically against these future carbon taxes. This is where we're seeing groups that are pressing down on changes going on with farming and really regulations, because Saturn, has an association with Aquarius as well, to the agricultural system. So as we start to see the end of January, Uranus goes direct, and we will see a number of planets start coming into a square later in Aquarius season with Uranus, where you guys are going to start hearing so much more about political moves. You're going to be hearing more about environmental moves, energy moves that has a huge impact on the consumer. Because that's what Taurus is. Taurus is the consumer. They buy, they eat, they spend, they collect. That's what Taurus is. It's about what you possess. This is also where we're going to start to see politics that are, creating some challenges or some friction with big banking or with personal banking. And I think that this is going to be the beginning where we're going to start to see some of the financial rumbles. But like I said, Pluto will be in Aquarius for most of this year. We will not be seeing any real squares other than some minor planets that are kind of moving. And even as we get into the summer of 2024, we're going to see Pluto and Jupiter trine. So Jupiter will come into Gemini and it will trine Pluto. So likely we're going to see some real growth in Gemini areas like media or transportation, cars, gadgets, which could be, really big for people who are investing in this type of technology. Now, the next time that I had that was really on my radar was going to be closer to the spring. In particular, I was looking at what was going on as a whole in the spring. I'll kind of look at the equinox. But we've got the spring equinox. And so, for me, this is the chart that I look at for the real new year. So it's going to tell me, hey, what's going on from, spring of 2024 until spring of 2025? What's the overall theme? And there's some really big energies that are going on with this particular chart, especially when I compare it to, the eclipse season, when I look at how it's impacting like the stock exchange chart. But this one in particular is basically saying, okay, a snapshot for the year. This is what's going to be, playing out. Well, actually, it's a little bit earlier, but we're going to see the moon, which is somewhere around an earlier degree of Leo, in opposition to Pluto. And that was the one thing that really kind of piqued my interest, was like, okay, there's something going on with how we're all feeling emotionally. Especially Leo can be about our investments. It can be about the stock market. It can be about our speculative stuff like gambling, all kind of feeling challenged by Pluto's control. I do feel like there is going to be some big impacts for the stock market, just looking at the stock exchange chart. But this also makes me wonder if this is going to be, quite serious for people who are creative or entertainers or people who are self-employed. We know that all is Leo energy as well. But this chart boasts some other things. For example, Venus conjunct Saturn, which represents a limitation, a crystallizing, a hardening, or a limit when it comes to pleasure, resources, money, food, and values. In the sign of Pisces, Venus is exalted, and it does make me feel like there can be some limits to what we're able to consume or what we're able to possess due to global concerns, especially over health. Now, I say health in particular because we see Mercury and Chiron in conjunction in Aries, and it's boasting that 18 degrees, which is a Virgo degree, so it can be about health, illness, sickness, and these types of issues. And we know that it's important to be paying attention to what's going on with Venus, because Venus rules the South Node. So that South Node in Libra represents releasing a tendency to be lazy, or a tendency to be too focused on partnerships or what other people think. There can be a sense of also clearing out karma in terms of, who we're doing business with or who we're kind of relating to with money. And we look at Mars because Mars is the ruler of the North Node. And Mars is coming into this critical degree of Aquarius. So we have Mars that's about to hit the last degree of Aquarius, which represents this kind of group mentality of frustration and pressure and the need or desire for some revolutionary energy and change. And Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius at the first degree. So we see both something that's kind of breaking down and then something that is kind of pushing back or fighting back. But for me, Mars is really important during the spring equinox, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, because the sun is in Aries. So this is where we have a fresh start. We will be coming into eclipse season. We will actually see just after the equinox that there is going to be an eclipse that's going to be in Libra. So we'll feel this building energy at the time. So it may perhaps suggest for the year, but at least for the better part of the first 3 months of 2024, of the real year, that there is going to be a lot of polarity, that there's going to be a lot of intensity, that we're going to be building towards feeling like, we maybe need to be a little bit more loud or proud with that Leo moon about what our needs are, or about what we're going to do about it, how we're spending, right? How we're investing. And so, yeah, the chart in itself is colorful. You know, the next couple of years, we're going to see the Saturn Neptune ingress into Aries, and we will see, I think closer to 2026, that conjunction will be taking place closer to the spring equinox. And that's a whole other video, but it can definitely be about where us as individuals are starting to feel limited or imprisoned in some way. Especially because we'll see sextiles to Pluto, so it can be by technology or by a system or by something connected to, you know, what's going on, what significant changes are happening with society. However, we could also see a return to living in a much more connected way to the planet. You know, Aries is seen as the hunter. It's also seen as the warrior, the fighter, the military personnel. And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be opting to become more self-sufficient and learning more about self-defense. So we'll see some people move to much more primal ways of living, or maybe we're going to see people who are going to be kind of living a little bit more nomadic, where they're going to be going where they need to go because they feel like they're going to have more personal freedom. For me, one of the bigger things I think also is that, you know, this Chiron, which represents wounding on a personal level, will be conjunct Mercury. And Mercury has associations with communication, travel, information, social media, but also health. So that conjunction is going to really represent where a lot of people are feeling that it's painful to speak out, or a lot of people are going to be speaking out about health issues. They're going to be speaking out about some kind of intervening of the military on their personal lives or on their personal freedoms. So I'll leave it at that. But something about this chart tells me that really the lesson of 2024 to 2025 is really going to be about the need to speak out, and where speaking out sometimes can hurt you quite literally, or put you in a position where you're feeling like the outsider, because that's what Chiron is all about. Now in April, the beginning of April, we are going to see a solar eclipse that's going to be in Aries at 19 degrees, conjunct Chiron. So it'll be right smack dab on that particular North Node Chiron conjunction, likely unleashing what's going to be, I think, a global health event. I know, don't shoot the messenger, but I'm just telling you guys like it is. I've spoke about this for a very long time. I've been trying to explain to everybody that if it's not physical health issues, it's mental health issues. If it's not mental health issues, then it's carrying the wound of being the person who has to be the leader and speak out and go, this is wrong. This is really not allowing me to be able to be independent, self-sufficient. And we're going to have some people who are going to rise up and they're going to be the mouthpieces for freedom. And we're going to have some people that are going to decide that they want to kind of retreat, and they would like to, you know, hide away and decide to get sucked into television, get sucked into drugs, get sucked into alcohol, with all of that Saturn, Venus in Pisces in the 12th house. It's up to you to decide which side that you're going to be on. There's something to be said about the effects of fear and how it affects the immune system. If you're constantly being beat down with news of this coming or this global event or that scare or this, you know, potential future pandemic, you start to kind of lose momentum in terms of feeling like you have a say, or you have an ability to be able to kind of change the future. One of the best pieces of advice I can give you just looking at this chart is turn the news off. They're not telling you the truth anyway, but literally turn the news off. If you want to seek information about what's going on in the world, the best way for you to do this is to be going and seeking independent media, or to be choosing to create your own reality. So much about all of this Aries in the first house here is talking about the ability to make up your mind that you have to put your oxygen mask on first, work on what you can work on step by step every day, do the best you can, focus on your health, and really learn how to become more self-sufficient. Because Aries also has this like entrepreneurial energy. And I think those who are opting to get out of the matrix, get out of the system, finding ways to start side hustles, other businesses, and other means of being able to really produce resources for themselves are going to be the ones who are going to be the most financially, you know, kind of secure. Now, I want to show you guys how this affects the New York Stock Exchange chart. I know not everybody lives in America, but this is a chart that is just going to get battered with the eclipse. Okay, so this is the spring equinox. So really it's interesting because it's bringing lots of attention through the eclipses as well to the moon of the New York Stock Exchange chart. We're also seeing a Mars-Pluto conjunction, which could be pretty intense in regards to the relationship people might have with the market. The moon returns exactly roundabout to the ascendant of the stock exchange chart. And we see Mercury coming into conjunction with that midheaven. Something else we'll see this year is Uranus is going to come into conjunction with the stock exchange sun. Okay, yes, Jupiter will be there as well. I think we're going to see some turbulence regardless. I think you're going to see a lot of volatility. But let's look at that as well. So let's pull up the transits. There we go. We'll pull up the transits of the eclipse. Let's look at the eclipse because that's what really I was looking at here. Okay. So both of the eclipses actually are going to bring a lot of attention to the New York Stock Exchange. Spring of 2024, at the end of March on the 25th, we're going to see a lunar eclipse in Libra. Beginning of April, we're going to see a solar eclipse in Aries, and it is just all over this particular chart. So when we see lunar eclipses in Libra, it's big emotional completions and conclusions revolving around relationships, balance, sometimes even law. And that's going to be right on top of the North Node. Okay, so the North Node in astrology deals with kind of the purpose, the destiny, the direction for soul growth. We see unexpected things happen when stuff goes down involving the North Node. Now, currently, the New York Stock Exchange is getting ready to experience a reverse nodal return. So we're seeing a little bit of like, you know, moving away from or deciding to move away from the past and asking ourselves if we want to repeat similar patterns moving forward. But this eclipse right on top of the North Node in the third house is likely going to have a lot of media, a lot of people talking about the stock exchange, what's going on with the markets. And this will be an eclipse that's ruled by Venus. Well, Venus will return to the 8th house, and it's going to be conjunct Saturn. And so this can be an indication of losses, in particular for things connecting to, you know, water, pharmaceuticals, stuff that's connected to hospitals, medical related situations. And we're also going to be seeing that this eclipse has Mars right on the cusp of the 8th house. So 8th house can be a tricky house. It's not always about wealth. It's about, you know, 2nd house is what we have, 8th house is what we give. So if you're somebody who's dabbling in like day trading or like swing trading, you know, really keep your eyes open the end of March, really through about June, because we're going to see some wild stuff. Now, if we look at the next eclipse, which will be the Aries solar eclipse, this made my eyes pop out of my head. We've got the solar eclipse at 19 degrees of Aries, ushering in basically new energy, new action, new intentions. That is very quick moving, right? It's a fire eclipse and it's right on top of the moon. So this can talk about the public reputation. This can talk also about how people feel about the stock exchange. The moon in this chart also rules the 12th house. So it can be things that come out of left field that we don't see coming. We know that the United States also has a Cancer sun. So it can be an indication that there is some wild events that are going on with the stock market as a result of some unexpected potential war or attack. That's what Aries is about. Now, this is going to be conjunct Chiron. So collectively, this is an eclipse that's going to be about, you know, unveiling a wound, dealing with a wound. 19 degrees can be relationships. So it can be exposing, you know, people who may have a relationship with the stock market that is not healthy, or where they get wounded by it, or where, you know, on an individual level, we're realizing that, you know, Wall Street is really not helping the average everyday investor. If anything, we're just kind of seeing money that's being filtered in and money that's kind of being, you know, deposited into other people's accounts. And wealth is basically being generated, I think, for, you know, people on a global scale who are investing in war, because that's what Aries is about. Now, we're going to see a Mercury retrograde with this eclipse. So Mercury will be retrograding right around the Saturn placement. So the moon Saturn can bring this kind of harsher kind of, feelings and emotions revolving around this. We can see a lot of people who are very critical of some of the cycles of what's going on, or maybe what stocks are running. But also, I think with Mars being the ruler, that conjunction to Saturn is like, where there might be an orchestrated manipulation of the market, knowing that there is going to be money that is being invested into it, building it up, only to knock it back down. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but we've seen some things that just generally do not make sense with some of the market cycles. And a lot of people have speculated or questioned whether or not this has been something that has been artificially propped up. So if we take this now to just the transits, the next time period that I was looking at is obviously going to be the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. This is going to be taking place closer to mid-April. I think we're going to see this right on the 20th. And this is going to be with Jupiter and Uranus meeting at 21 degrees. Well, you remember how I said he who has the gold makes the rules? Usually it's the king that has the gold that's sitting on the gold mine. Jupiter was the king of all of the gods. That's who he was. He was somebody who was very, intelligent, but also he knew how to lead. There is some sense of royalty, and Jupiter rules over abundance and resources and philosophy and education and the higher mind. So he was very honest. That's really what Jupiter is about. It's about integrity. So I look at Jupiter and Uranus coming into conjunction, and people starting to look around, kind of questioning is there some concerns for what's going on with the financial system? Jupiter will make things bigger. So Jupiter in Taurus can increase things like cost of beef. We're going to see also leather. We're going to see increase for energy surges. Those of you guys who do not keep records, I recommend going and looking at just the last 3 years of what's been going on with your utility bills. Go and look at what you were paying in 2019, 2020 for your energy, for your gas. Go and look at what you were also paying for your fuel costs. Go and look at what you're paying. It's probably harder for your food, but if you keep, logs of that, of what your spending was monthly, compare them together, right? Start looking at what you were paying, because electricity and gas, I think, are likely going to be the things that are going to be really, really expensive. And obviously, there has to be this kind of organized push to make some of these more, costly, to kind of support or prop up this climate crisis, so they can bring in new legislation to kind of say, well, now we have to have carbon taxes, you're paying extra money for this, or it's more to register your car. We're already seeing this in parts of Europe. But 21 degrees in general, this is a global degree. It's a Sagittarius degree. So this is where things go up, right? Because Sagittarius is very tall. It does also represent expansion. And Venus is the dispositor. Venus is the ruler of this 21 degrees. And would you look at that? We see Venus at 19 degrees, same degree as the solar eclipse, conjunct also the Mercury-Chiron conjunction that was taking place during the spring equinox. And we see a Mercury retrograde that's going on in Aries around the same place. What is the Sabian symbol? Because I don't know. What is the Sabian symbol for 19 degrees? Because that's where everything has been kind of hanging around of Aries. You guys are watching me do this in real time because I didn't look at it. Okay, so 19 degrees. The magic carpet, the keyword is panorama. The theme is, but I can dream, can't I? The symbol speaks to the magic of fantasy and the marvelous capacity of man to fulfill his dreams and his imagination and enjoy playing various roles without assumption of any responsibility. The magic carpet symbolizes freedom, optimism, aspiration. It also suggests a broader perspective on the ability to see experience in the context of the whole which it occurs. The rising above aspect of the symbol points to the detachment and the ability to vicariously enjoy experience without becoming personally involved. On a practical level, it can indicate attempts to alleviate stress or simply wish fulfillment when a prisoner dreams of being with a loved one, a child imagines he's the president of a country, or an office worker fantasizes about lying on a warm, sunny beach. At its highest, it represents vision, creativity, and a gift for the world in terms of possibilities and endless opportunities. Watch for escapism and emotional detachment. The accent is on imagination and enjoyment. Your creative energies are flowing. You may find yourself daydreaming and fantasizing more than usual, or wanting to get away from it all. Your detached and carefree attitude helps you see things at a higher point of view. Opportunities and possibilities were unrecognizable when you were too close to the picture or too personally involved can now be seen. Your greatest advantage lies in the ability to visualize and hold a clear image of your mind of what you want to accomplish. Use your imagination, aim for the sky, and expect success. Anything that can be dreamed can be achieved. Wishes come true. Guard against focusing on limitations, problems, and obstacles, telling yourself there's no way to reach your goal or no way out of a situation in a sure guarantee failure. Running away isn't the answer. Stepping stones is vision, board, perspective, possibilities, fantasy, wish fulfillment, freedom, enjoyment, optimism, aspiration. I love this. I love this because I feel like, once again, okay, and like the astrology keeps saying the same thing, we have two camps. Yet another aspect where we see a Mars Saturn, we saw Venus Saturn, and Mercury and Venus is kind of like, what do I want? Right? And what does Aries want? Aries wants to be free. It cannot be contained. You know, it's hard to contain fire. And if you don't contain fire, it can be dangerous. But I think of like the Mercury North Node of what am I doing? You know, retrograde. What am I doing on a personal level to be more involved? What am I going to do about it? Venus, what do I love? How am I taking action in what I love? Venus in its fall, conjunct Chiron, where perhaps like, you know, indulging in things and turning a blind eye to what's going on in the world, or saying there's nothing I can do about it, there's no point, what's the point, is almost just like mocking this continuation of like what we're hearing from some of these world leaders, or what we're hearing from, you know, people at the left, or what we're being told. You know, you're just a single person, you can't do anything. But if enough people realize that you don't have to subscribe to this reality, you don't have to live in fear, you don't have to feel as if you don't have a choice in the matter, that creates a huge shift in society. So I'm hoping that when this conjunction is happening, people are going to start realizing like, no, we don't have to do this. We don't have to subscribe to, you know, having to move our system to being cashless. Uranus, on the other hand, is a whole other can of worms, because Uranus at 21 also talks about where there has been resistance, it gets bigger. So that can be a good thing. Like if there's been enough people who are resisting and saying, no, we're not going back into lockdowns, or no, we're not going to be following the mandates, or no, we're not going to be okay with just this conversion, you could see significant change. Certainly, you know, Mars is kind of, it's trapped between Saturn and Neptune, and Mars in Pisces has a tendency to kind of spin its wheels. It doesn't really exactly know quite where to go. So where Saturn says, no, you can't do this, and Neptune says, hey, there's reasons that we can't tell you why you can't go here. There's reasons why we're telling you you can't see this. That also, the shrouding in suspicion, or, you know, not showing all of the facts or the information, or being told not to, you know, don't do your research, don't look into it, don't go down the rabbit hole, don't use common sense or critical thinking. If you're anyone like me, that's the first thing you're going to do. I'm a little mischievous that way. And that is really the key, I think, of Uranian energy. It's don't tell me what to do. You know, I'm going to turn tables over because I realize that that's kind of what needs to happen. And Mercury as well. Mercury is also a little mischievous, but it's retrograde in conjunction to the North Node. So it's really this calling that's like, what am I going to do about it? You know, and Mercury is the thought, it's systems. And I really feel like April is going to be when shit hits the fan. And a lot of people wake up and they realize, well, we're being told we can't do this. You don't have to accept it. You know, I also want to remind people that unless Congress says that we're going to war, we're not actually in a war. And the United States has been involved in now 2 unofficial wars, both in Palestine, and also what we've seen in the Ukraine. But nothing was passed, no legislation was passed through Congress, yet we're funneling billions of dollars of our tax-paid money to this system, which is funding more wars, which is continuing to feed the beast. And we're seeing that tons of people who are involved in military contracting, many politicians, many people also in big business are just making tons of money with this. Essentially, it's essentially, money laundering. I hate to say that, but that's what it is. So I think this is when people start to wake up and they start to realize, like, wait a second, this system is changing. How does it affect me? Pivotal moment in time, I think, for all of us collectively. And with Venus coming into conjunction with Chiron, I think that, we can be seeing the wounds where that is definitely a really soft spot, where when people realize, like, hey, I'm kind of at my limits with things financially, or I'm already feeling stretched, and now this is happening, how is it going to affect me? It is going to, I think, put a lot of us in a position where we're going to have to really be thinking about our morals, our ethical kind of beliefs when it comes to money, possession, and resources, and whether we're being put in a position or not to do some things that we would more or less kind of go against our morals. You guys have to be prepared for that. The last time that this happened, they told people they couldn't work, they couldn't go to school, they couldn't see their elderly relatives, they couldn't go into hospitals when babies were being born, they couldn't travel without listening to what they told you to do. So this is going to happen again. You have to ask yourself, are you prepared to say no? Look at some of your friends and some of your relatives and people who you said were crazy. You have to be looking at what has happened in the past and really ask yourself now, if it comes down to eating, buying food, if it comes down to being able to travel, if it comes down to being able to go back to work, are you going to go along with whatever is being told to you? I'm personally treating this disease X no different than monkeypox or anything else that came up. That's just me, because I genuinely do feel as if everything going on right now is to organize a lot of fear, and to stir a lot of people up, and then to turn people against each other. The human auric field works in a way where if you get so close to somebody, you can actually build on your energy. So no coincidence, right? With the 6 feet law, but whatever, which happened to be bullshit. If they can divide individuals and keep people separate, out of relationships, out of harmony, out of union, out of marriages or partnerships or business partnerships or any kind of support system, and they get them alone and cornered, they're going to start to see where people are going to start turning on each other. So the key here is actually to be investing in skills, investing in yourself, and also really having hard talks with yourself, your family, your loved ones, your friends about how you can build these new alternate parallel societies where you can trade, exchange, share, right? That's really what this is going to be about. Because if it happens to be, I think, a blip in the radar where we do see some event or we do see some issue with the banking system, I don't genuinely believe it will be something that will be for months on end. I don't. Because the world's going to shut down, and they just want it to be just long enough just to kind of scare people. So when I think of Jupiter Uranus, I think of people who have some extra food. Maybe they save some seeds. Maybe they're learning about food canning or preserving. Maybe you're deciding that, you want to be starting your own victory garden, or you're growing with, your communities or with your neighbors. You're learning more about co-ops and also farmers markets and alternative ways that have always been there to get your resources. Guys, we can get stuff from places other than just the grocery store. It's very possible. We just have to be willing to kind of do what Uranus is telling us to do. Okay. So this is going to stretch from about April 14th through the 27th, as that conjunction is building and then kind of closing. And what's interesting is that we're going to see Jupiter and Uranus actually move from 21 to 22 right around the same time. So then, Uranus is going to join, and that'll be around the 24th. Now, I've read to you guys The Bridge Over Troubled Water so many times, so you guys don't need to hear it. But I will read to you guys 22, which I've read to you as well. So the Sabian symbol that I'm going to read is going to be 23, because we round up. Some of you guys are like, what is she doing? So the Sabian symbol is 23, a jewelry shop. The keyword is preservation. The theme is all that glitters. The symbol speaks to practical and material values and a man's desire to own his own and possess those things that affirm or validate his personal concept of who he is. The image of a jewelry shop full of precious gems and minerals emphasizes luxury, wealth, and beauty. Jewelry is used to commemorate special events such as engagements, coronations, graduations, and weddings. Thus, it alludes to achievement, accomplishment, and special status. This also symbolizes aspiration, romance, and reward. At its highest, it represents wealth, a lower sign of higher mastery of values, and a unique talent for creating beauty through imaginative enhancements of the ordinary. Watch for greed and materialism or bad taste and gaudy adornment. The accent is on possessions. You may be tempted to overspend or be extravagant with your resources. A change in status is indicated. Your greatest advantage lies in focusing on quality. Work for and expect the best that can be achieved. Guard against excess or losing something of value by taking more than you need or going overboard with in some direction. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Stepping stones are luxury, wealth, beauty, values, reward, elegance, lavishness, extravagance, or splendor. But I think of like Mars, Saturn, of people getting freaked out about shortages, and people being like, oh, what do I need? What do I need to do? It pays to be prepared. There's a ton of prepper channels on YouTube. Go watch them. I'm not saying all of them are, all of the end of daysers, have it right, to each their own. But being prepared and knowing that you have a plan in the off chance you can't get something, or if for whatever reason, you needed to have a plan with your family for traveling if something were to go on in your area, or, would you have a few extra cans of food that you pick up, every other time you go to the grocery store, or some cash on hand, because he who has the gold makes the rules, and rules is Jupiter. Jupiter conjunct Uranus means we're throwing rules out the window. We're going to see that there's going to be new laws, I think, revolving around banking and institution. 22 is government. The government's going to start coming in and saying what you can and cannot possess. I don't know if that's going to be in terms of food. I don't know if that's going to be in terms of metals or precious, gold, silver. I'm looking at that Venus, and it does impact individuals. And I really feel like it's going to be about whether or not you can actually go and physically buy food or go and physically take out cash. So knowing that that's a possibility, and I can't laugh, but I can now. I've had emails from people who have emailed me saying, you said this in the past, I thought it was crazy. I unsubscribed from your channel, and then I, couldn't go and take money out, or we had the Zelle issues that was going on with the banks recently. And a lot of people, I had like a dozen people email me, and they were like, I was talking trash on your channel, like, I'm now subscribed. And, I can only be humble about that. This isn't me saying I told you so, but this is one of those videos where it really pays to be prepared. That 18, 19 degrees of Aries keeps getting hit. And we will see that Jupiter will pass Uranus, but Uranus is still going to kind of hang out in this degree. And I wonder if it's going to be about possession of digital currencies as well. I do feel like that's possibly going to be what's coming, because, right, there has to be this sense of being like, wait a second, there's now, power for the people, Pluto and Aquarius. They have alternative ways of being able to trade. Look at what's going on with some of the raids of Amish farms and stuff in the United States. That's part of this, because they're self-sustained, they're independent. And I feel like anybody who is able to do that and is not just willingly kind of getting in line and saying, yes, give me my universal basic income, please feed me, can I have some more, is going to be seen as a threat, or is going to be seen as extreme in a sense of, of any, you pick the label, it doesn't really matter. And I really feel like the goal here with Uranus is to be the awakener, right? Because the traditional ruler, of Pisces is Jupiter. Oh, and here's Jupiter, conjunct Uranus sextile. Is this the process, the beginning of the great awakening, of people starting to kind of realize that it's the matrix, it's all a facade, none of it is real, that everything is being orchestrated and created to control you and make you think that you don't stand a chance? I don't need to be the one to tell you this, but we outnumber some of the people who are telling us that we're going to eat the bugs. Right? And so you listen to these videos, maybe you share these videos, maybe you go and you see other media, you share it with people, you talk about it, but what are you doing about it? That is the question. And that's really what we're going to be asking ourselves over the spring. Now, 22 degrees is about government, limits, tests, challenges, barriers, and it can also be new rules regarding, what we can possess, or new banking rules in terms of what the banks are going to be doing with money. But remember that Taurus is food, physical goods, but Taurus is wallets. So I'm watching to see when are they going to be issuing this digital wallet, because there's no use in having digital dollars if there isn't a digital wallet. And for me personally, not a super religious person, but I've thought for some time that when that time comes, that would be the moment where I would be like, I'm not entering that system. I will borrow, trade, do whatever I have to do, go back to baking bread before I would want to get into that system, which is why I have always been very much for anything that's going to give you freedom, and personally have been really for Bitcoin. And I think that that may be one of the few last opportunities in terms of being able to have free trade. But once again, not a financial advisor. The other time that came up for me also was going to be when we saw, I don't know which one comes first, the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, or is it going to be the Jupiter-Saturn square? Let's see. So the Mars-Jupiter, well, Mars-Uranus too, that's another one. So Mars and Uranus are going to come into conjunction here, right around mid-July of 2024. And as I've said before, Mars is so darn important because it is the North Node ruler. So here we have Mars in Taurus, so taking action when it comes to food and resources. This can be sudden, unexpected cuts, limits, things that involve, group resources. We can also see issues with power and conflicts revolving around like nuclear energies, because that can also be Uranus. But this will be at a 26. So this is going to be about Taurus. It's going to be about banking once again. For me, this was the time that I was more concerned about being like, okay, if there was going to be a grid down scenario, if there was going to be, the banks collapsed, I feel like it would actually be more likely to be with this conjunction. I find it also interesting that Mars is moving into a sextile with Saturn and also with Neptune. And as is Uranus as well. So where there's some kind of shady stuff that's going on behind, closed doors, we start to see that it's having some effects on the food, the food production. We're seeing how it's having an effect on the planet, things that are kind of mysterious or suspicious, right? Things that we're hearing about on screens and how it's kind of like making people panic buy or making people kind of fight each other for toilet paper again. I hope not. When this conjunction happens, we will see the moon also in Scorpio. So it looks like on the 15th and the 16th of July, the moon will oppose Uranus and Mars. And yeah, we're starting to see, I think this is possibly where we're having issues physically having possession of our resources. And we know when the moon goes through Scorpio, Scorpio's already a little like, where's my stuff? Give me my things. They're already kind of prepped or anticipating worst case scenario. We'll see in August, this will be the first of actually 3 Jupiter-Saturn squares. And so this is one transit that I was like, this is not ideal. This will be around the 19th of 2024. As many of you guys may or may not know, Jupiter will be ingressing into Gemini this year. It'll be in its fall, which means it's kind of moving through its opposite sign of what it's associated with, of Sagittarius. The positive is that, like I said, Jupiter is expansion. It can be abundance. It can be about laws. It is going to be about our belief system and how we're putting it into words, what we're talking about, blogging about, what we're texting about, what we're sharing. Just being somebody who's a T-Mobile user, personally, some of the stuff that's come up recently over the last month or two about their new terms and conditions and about like fines and things revolving around what you're talking about in personal text messages and information is a little concerning. I think that in general, Saturn coming into a square with Jupiter does tell me that Saturn will have limits on Gemini things. So Jupiter and Gemini will expand news networks. We're going to see new social media. We're going to see new content, new media networks, and opportunities for traveling and also cars. This might also be like some movements that are happening in your local community. So I think we're going to see a return to some kind of like revolutionary times where, people used to have town hall meetings. People used to go to the town square and rant and rave about their issues and talk about it and then take it to basically their local representatives, or start banding together and working together to create local movements so we could see some kind of national change. Let's do it. I would love to participate in some of that for sure. But the problem here that we're going to see is that Jupiter is in its fall. So it's moving through a sign where it can know too much, or it can say too much, or it can put too much out there. And Jupiter is going to be lassoed by Saturn. So Saturn in Pisces, obviously, especially in the second decan. Okay, so it'll go from about, I think like 4 to 19 degrees this year. It literally represents secret opposition. Okay, so things that are keeping you from being seen, stuff that's not allowing your YouTube to, put out your videos, stuff that's not allowed to be reshared, throttling of your content, losing subscribers. This is all like real shit. Like, we're going to see some people who have content and they're just losing subscribers, unfortunately. This will prompt a lot of people to look at their media, or they'll look at who their cell phone carrier is or who their internet carrier is, after realizing, I don't have access to things, I can't see things, stuff's not showing up. There has been legislation that's been passed recently that's basically saying that the Biden administration has given free rein to allow throttling of internet, especially if there's like some sense of awareness that there's content that can be concerning. Google's done this recently as well, putting out information talking about, what can be considered a sensitive event. I will leave it at that. I know that I'm on a Google platform. And also just this continuation of AI. So, now with Pluto and Aquarius, we are seeing in real time that videos are being uploaded. There's stuff on the back end where they're able to, in real time, go and get full basic, dialogue of everything that you're saying on the video. And then it's potentially being scored or being rated. As a content creator, we can see this because we can see how things are performing or what visibility we're getting from video to video, week to week, month to month. So it's really important to share these videos. If you see a content creator you like, they're putting out information that's important, give them a thumbs up, subscribe to them, share and repost their videos, because that is what helps get this information out. But Saturn is basically throwing this invisible lasso and pulling Jupiter back and not allowing news to break, not allowing people to share, not allowing people to travel. If Taurus is your wallet, Jupiter in Gemini is going to be travel documents, okay? This is big. Passports of sorts. There's new passports that are coming out. If you guys haven't already seen them, it's insane. It looks totally different. It doesn't look American at all, in my opinion. But there's going to be new passports that are coming out. We might see new forms of ID. We might be hearing about new forms of ID, especially in relation to having the freedom to get on the internet, to be considered press. Yes, we have identification for press, especially for, places that are of utmost importance with security within the United States and in Washington. But free press, I'm wondering if this is going to be the beginning of the end of the free press. Now, we'll see this square that's going to happen several times. The first one's going to happen in August. I think we see another one that's going to happen around December, I believe. And then we'll see one more that's going to be in 2025. So this is going to kind of go on and off for a period of time. What's also fascinating is this happens where at a time where Mars is coming into conjunction with Jupiter. So this is people who are speaking out, getting agitated, getting angry, and it's challenging Saturn, which can be those who are in charge. I personally don't think it's all that crazy when you hear people talk about a solar flare or a grid down event, or, knocking out certain areas where people aren't going to have access to media or media blackouts. I think that's very possible. There's a reason why I was telling people it's important to make sure that you're saving information and not just relying on the internet. I know, especially myself of all people, I very rarely know where I'm going without GPS. And so for 2024, it's been more important for me to know more of my local area, know more of the highways, the freeways. And I got one of those big old fashioned, like what grandpa had, those big Thomas guide maps, and I put it in my car. It sounds ridiculous, but I did that. And I put a compass in there as well, because I was like, if for whatever reason I don't have GPS, I don't know where I'm going, and that's not a good situation. because I want to feel like I know what direction I'm going in, which I rarely do. Anyway, for me, that's an example of the Mars conjunct Jupiter knowledge when it gets to go when it has to do with where I'm going, and not relying on screens. I don't think many of us can say that, and this is probably an important thing to know, but also documents that are important, saving important documents, referencing material, buying hard copy books, buy reference books, buy medical books, buy dictionaries, buy Bibles, buy things that you're going to need to reference in the future, especially things that might pertain to your constitutional rights. I think that's very important. I'm hoping that we're going to see companies that are going to be popping up and also be maybe selling prints of this or including it so people can put it in their car, so people are aware of their rights when they are traveling, because there's a huge difference between a law and a mandate. And I don't think a lot of people know that, because a mandate is something that is basically said you should do this, but it's not a law. So when in doubt, the one thing that you really want to do is be reading and learning about the law, right? Mars, Jupiter. And also it's going to be about stuff involving information and communication and freedom of speech. Now, this square activates the hell out of the United States chart. As many of you guys know, that Mars that we have in the 7th house is definitely a bit of a bully. But let's put that up here. All right, so this is, those of you guys who are not familiar, this is the Sibley chart for July 4th, 1776 in Philadelphia. So this is the chart that a lot of astrologers use for the birth of the nation. And when I was looking at the Saturn-Jupiter square, the day that it perfects, it correlates with a lunar return, it correlates with a Mars return, and Jupiter is coming into conjunction with Mars. And we're going to see a Sun, Mercury, Cazimi in Leo, where we're going to be hearing that some leaders, right, are saying we're going to war. This is going to be in August of 2024. It could happen sooner. Obviously, I don't want this. I never want war. I'm not somebody who's for it. I strongly believe that the continuation of feeding the war machine and also all the propaganda connected to war is constantly keeping us all separate, and it's also isolating us from the opportunity to be able to unite in a global fashion. In recent weeks, we've heard stuff that's been coming out that's been basically leaked, where there's talk of Britain and Germany and China, the talks in Sweden about potentially having a draft and telling people to prepare for war, that war is imminent against Russia, who has blatantly come out and said they don't want war. They don't want war. They've said this over and over and over again. If anything, we've seen issues with Ukraine that's been pushing closer and closer with some of that conflict with the war, and really NATO getting involved with Sweden and bringing NATO closer and closer to Russia's doorstep. And Russia has essentially said, we're not having that. So nothing has been said as of right now about war, but a Mars return in the United States 7th house with Jupiter being there. Jupiter rules this chart, and it can indicate that maybe very similar to World War II, that the United States is getting dragged into a war as a result of a relationship with an ally, because that's what the 7th house is. So what a Hail Mary this may potentially be for this current administration if we do end up seeing that, hey, the economy's, in the trash can. We're seeing lots of issues potentially with the banking system. People may push back against that, and then ultimately it's going to be, well, we've had an attack or there is a false flag, which I believe will happen. And now we're going to war, which could enable this current administration to enact wartime presidential, powers, which is essentially allowing a disruption of what could be the 2024 election. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I really feel like this is really what we're barreling towards with some of the things that we're seeing. Now, the United States will actually have Jupiter hit Mars several times, and Mars is at 21 degrees of Gemini, so there's no coincidence, right, that it's at a degree that deals with Sagittarius, which is about foreign wars. I think a lot of Americans kind of pass off being like, yeah, more taxes, bigger military budgets, whatever. We can't do anything about it. Let them spend the money because we don't want to have it on our soil. which has led to a complete abuse of power, and also just the United States going in and just essentially being the bully on the playground. That's what's been happening. I really feel like many people would disagree with that. But I feel like we're also going to hear more revolving around rules and whether or not, there is our country is abiding by rules of war. There are certain things that you cannot do, chemical warfare, other things like that. And whether or not, we are hearing an announcement about going to war because things have happened where we have to kind of jump in and support an ally. But if these things were to happen, obviously it would be horrible. World War III is not going to be like anything that we've seen in previous generations. I feel like potentially with Pluto going into Aquarius, where the threat of nuclear war is very real, especially with conjunctions to Uranus. That Mars-Uranus conjunction is very heated and very dangerous. This is definitely not something that we want. Now, in October of 2024, specifically on October 9th, we are going to see Jupiter return, and it will actually retrograde at 21 degrees. So you can't make this stuff up. Jupiter will retrograde exactly in conjunction to the United States Mars. So maybe many of you guys are asking me, like, why are you talking about war during a video that's supposed to be about finances? Well, why do you think? How do you think this money is made? How do you think they stimulate economies? How do you think they get the stock market out of the gutter and get them excited and kind of pump those war stocks? It's about money, money and contracting and the relationships that we have with other countries and the ability to send people off who are young people to die in war so old rich men can get richer. That's more or less what I'm kind of seeing. When this second conjunction happens and we start to see that Jupiter is going retrograde, the Mars return obviously has ended in the United States, but we're going to be seeing Mars coming into a conjunction with Mercury. So it can be talking about stimulating money and resources as a result of war. What else do I have here? And then we will also see at the end of the year, this will be from December of 2024 to February of 2025, Mars will then go retrograde over the US North Node, right here. Some may speculate that this can be talking about the death of a leader. I don't want to go there, but I could see that maybe. But Mars will actually go retrograde right in conjunction to the North Node, which is ruled by the Sun. Sun's in the 7th, so it's going to be about, aligning with one country. Maybe there's going to be deals in terms of supporting them in war because of the resources and the assets and the things that we get. I don't know. But that's going to be an interesting retrograde in itself, as we see Mars make several oppositions to Pluto that's going in and out of Aquarius. While the United States is finished with their Pluto return, it ain't over yet. Over the next couple of years, we're still going to be seeing Pluto come into conjunction with the South Node. The irony that makes major aspects, to the Bitcoin chart really makes me seriously question whether or not in the future the US dollar may potentially be backed by Bitcoin. I know that sounds crazy, but I think it's possible. So this Mars retrograde that's going to happen is essentially, when we think of Mars going retrograde in the 8th house, can be talking about, issues pertaining to resources, debt, spending, and I'll leave it at that. Now we will see the second Jupiter-Saturn square happen. Unfortunately, this is going to be around Christmas time. Let's go to Christmas in 2024. On December 24th, 2024, we see the second Saturn-Jupiter square. So remember, where Saturn wants to limit, Jupiter wants to expand. This will happen, at a Taurus degree, 14. So we're seeing like further limitations of growth and resources. And I feel like this can be pointing to some economic issues. I have not said this in this video, but in previous Jupiter and Gemini cycles, we do see large increases in unemployment. we do see a lot of layoffs that happen as well. So I do feel like that's something that we will see throughout this transit this year. I think a lot of that is going to be built off of what is actually kind of rumbling with some of the changes pretty much from April on with some of these eclipses. And Jupiter squares Saturn, and Saturn is direct. Saturn's in a superior position through and through with this square. It won't really be until Jupiter breaks through and gets into Cancer that at least it'll be in its exaltation, but it's also going to meet a square to Saturn again. So that Saturn, Jupiter thing kind of hovers for still at least another year or so. And at this time, we'll be in the midst of what will be a Mercury retrograde that's kind of either currently brewing or I think just wrapping up. It will have just wrapped up in Sagittarius. So we'll see Mercury retrograde in Sag, where we're kind of losing a sense of faith and optimism about things. The opposition to Jupiter is about, growth, especially when it comes to communication. And Saturn will be the focal point of that T-square. I mean, everything is screaming secret opposition, things that are being withheld, media blackouts, limitation of seeing what's going on in the world. Don't believe me? Why are you not seeing the stuff that's going on in Germany on your 6 o'clock news? There's a reason why. They don't want people seeing what's going on. So we have to find alternative ways of sharing information. We have to find ways also to learn how to be better prepared for these changing times and some of these events and things that are kind of happening. And then, we wrap up with May 1st, 2025, which will be Jupiter conjunct Mars. I take that back. No, this will be Jupiter square Saturn. So we're coming into May. Jupiter is going to square Saturn. And yeah, that's not Jupiter conjunct Mars. Take that back. This is when Jupiter goes into Cancer and it starts squaring Saturn in Aries. So it's like we just can't get out of this cycle. And it won't really be until Jupiter passes that particular square, but that in itself is going to be a whole other video, that Saturn Neptune. And after that point in time, I think we can see a little bit more growth when it comes to law and things revolving around, individuals, but it's going to be after kind of going through the trenches in 2024. And then we're going to see Uranus get ready to pop into Gemini, and that's going to be trining Pluto. So more or less, the landscape of 2024 seems like it's really not paving the way. It's the initiation in the beginning of some of these global changes with money and how there is going to be this move to a digital currency. So you have to ask yourself, is that what you want? Do you agree with that? Is that something that you're hoping is going to happen? Obviously, I know this can be a difficult video for some people. Do go and do your research. Don't take my word for it. See what else is going on out there. Start establishing communities and maybe think about who you're banking with, where you're banking, what you're doing with your resources. Is it important for you to be holding cash? And also, are you investing in assets? It doesn't necessarily just have to be stocks or bonds or cryptocurrency. Are you buying things that can be valuable down the road? Some people have been speculating that it could be metals, although Pluto in Aquarius challenges that. We'll see how gold does. But Taurus could be copper. It could be agricultural land, physical land, real estate, property, and also seeds. So if you're somebody who, is involved in these things, or a little bit about food, what can be resourceful can be knowledge, right? So let me know, what do you guys think about some of this stuff? What are you anticipating with some of these events? How are you getting prepared? What information can you share with other people in the comments or other channels so people can kind of know what's going on and maybe get some resources for some of these trends? Obviously, I'll be back here throughout this next year talking to you guys about this as it kind of unfolds. I'm in this with you guys, and I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow. I'll be doing live readings. You can catch me here at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget to subscribe. Please do. It really helps the channel grow. And I will be back at it this week with some more astrology videos. Until next time, take care.